the good news is I won't be speaking very much at all, and I've actually got two of my colleagues at Roche who are leading the charge in this area in their respective disciplines to share the approach that we're taking around orchestration and exception management. Very briefly for me before we get into the discussion, we've been working on this for, well, actually in Ankai, your case, you've been working on it for a significant number of years, maybe 3 to 4 years. But in this current guise, with a focus of a viewpoint of industrialization, we've been working on this for a little over 2 years, and trying to develop our strategy, our model around this, and then looking to see how we can get this off the ground and into an effective and operational state with a view to scale, with a view to industrialization. Essentially, it wasn't straightforward. I think everybody's expressed this at this forum before, and we found that there wasn't really anything out in the marketplace that could effectively support us in that sense. So hopefully Ankai and Fred will be able to share that story and experience with us. So I think you probably all know me, so I won't introduce myself, but if I can hand over Ankai to introduce yourself and then Fred, and then we'll get into the content.
Hi, thank you, Tor. My name is Ankai, and I'm the lead product manager for the orchestration and exceptions management platform, and I'm based here in San Francisco.
Excellent. Fred? You're on mute, Fred?
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. So yes, I'm Fred Dardy, and I'm the lead architect on the CGT initiative that I have within Roche, and I'm based out of Switzerland.
Thanks, Fred. Ankai, I'm going to hand over to you. If it's okay with you, I'll forward the slides. If you just shout out when you want me to move from slide to slide. Over to you.
That sounds great. So yeah, I'll first start with a bit of business context, as well as the options that we ended up adopting for the orchestration and exceptions management platform. So next slide, please. So starting off with what is orchestration and exceptions management? This is essentially a new cell and gene therapy capability that we're developing within Roche that will focus on the virtual treatment journey for patients for both clinical as well as commercial cell and gene therapy value chains. We're one pillar of a larger team, so our partner functions are supply chain and patient operations. And together, these three functions are really working together to successfully enable the end-to-end value chain for cell and gene therapies. Next slide, please. So broadly, patient operations is responsible for the end-to-end patient journey. So, really being that key interface to healthcare providers and treatment centers throughout that treatment journey for the patients. Supply chain is responsible for the physical journey of materials. So they're defining the overall supply chain and collaborating with labs and CDMOs and other partners that are part of that end-to-end value chain. And orchestration and exceptions management is responsible for the digital journey. So we're developing solutions for end-to-end traceability as well as orchestration capabilities to enable these individualized value chains to operate at scale. Next slide, please. So, I think this group is already very well aware of this, but just to quickly set the foundation for the scope of our orchestration and exceptions management capabilities, it covers the fully made-to-order individualized therapies. So that first row across the top there, where it's really one batch per patient, fully individualized from end to end. And it also covers those therapies where it's made to stock, but have a made to order kit. So this is primarily the gene therapies out there as we know them today. And the most critical aspect of orchestration and exceptions management for these therapies is really the end-to-end traceability and really enabling that zero error value chain. Next slide, please. So just to highlight here our most critical focus, it's that secure zero failure chain of custody and chain of identity to really guarantee patient safety for these individualized cell and gene therapies. Additionally, we aim to develop a really scalable platform that will support a diverse portfolio of cell and gene therapies within our organization. We're also working to introduce standardization into these platforms because we feel that this would add tremendous value to the industry as well as to the cell and gene therapy space. And I'll definitely be speaking a bit more about this in some subsequent slides. And overall, just ensuring that cell and gene therapies are really easy to access and ensuring that we develop the platforms and solutions that make this the case for our customers. And finally, this is definitely a long-term investment for Roche. With the rapid pace at which cell and gene therapies are advancing and growing, we really believe that there's a really fruitful future for these therapies. And we want to ensure that the products that we develop now really support all of these cell and gene therapies moving forward, for the entire life cycle of these products. Next slide, please. So the overall design for our orchestration and exceptions management platform is in two main components. And from here on out, I'm going to refer to this platform as a THEROS, which stands for Advanced Therapy Orchestration System. So the first main component is the treatment center platform. And the treatment center platform, or TCP, is the key interface to treatment centers that will allow healthcare providers to order cell and gene therapies, monitor the progress of the patient's therapy through the value chain, and finally receive that final product and confirm that chain of identity and chain of custody. The TCP will also enable that robust chain of custody, chain of identity, starting at the treatment center and ending at the treatment center. So including serving as an entry point for any patient data that may be required, or any biospecimen identifying information that may be required for the value chain and for manufacturing. We are partnered with Accenture to co-innovate the TCP. And the objective here is actually to develop a universal industry solution to really create a single front door for treatment centers to engage with cell and gene therapy manufacturers. And I'll provide some more details about that on the next few slides. Before I jump over to that though, so while the TCP is external facing, the other component of our Atheros platform is the treatment management platform. And this is more a umbrella of products and services. And as is the TCP, we're really focused on this service-based design. And the TMP is an internal facing capability that's going to orchestrate all the various processes and transactions to enable the value chain and, for example, enable the flow of goods and flow of funds. So the TMP will be integrated with TCP as well as internal ERP systems. And it's going to have a number of products and services under that, including a supply chain partner portal to collaborate with labs and CMOs and partners. There's going to be courier integration capabilities, the management of end-to-end chain of custody, chain of identity, a scheduling service to really automate that slot scheduling process for cell and gene therapies, labeling to enable kit personalization, as well as the printing of labels that contain patient information. So yeah, just to name a few of the products and services that we are building. And here we've partnered with SAP to co-innovate the TMP. And the goal here is to really create a product that can be adopted across the industry. Let's go to the next slide. So the reason that we're so keen to develop a universal treatment center platform is that we've been hearing a lot of feedback from healthcare providers that the current model, where it's essentially one portal per therapy, is not sustainable and definitely not scalable. So at the time of doing this research last year, major treatment centers were already working with 5+ portals for various cell and gene therapies. And this portal proliferation is only getting worse as more of these therapies become available. And so there's definitely a desire from healthcare providers to have a single standardized treatment center portal that simplifies their workflows. Additionally, from the industry perspective, the surveying showed that most individuals do not think that having a differentiated portal is a critical capability for their products. So given all of this information, we think that developing this universal TCP is really the right step for the industry. Next slide. So we've now established an industry consortium to really advance the development of a universal TCP. So this consortium is composed of manufacturers, as well as potential treatment center customers, and ecosystem partners like logistics providers, for example. We're working with the standards coordinating body on this effort. So they've been facilitating working sessions where participants are coming together to discuss key challenges and requirements and how standardization can be achieved. So we've been having these sessions bi-weekly, and we've covered topics including patient identification and patient enrollment, as well as therapy ordering and scheduling. And we're going to continue having these sessions moving forward to cover other aspects of that end-to-end process. Additionally, our team is also working on setting up sessions with other manufacturers to essentially work as design partners and ensuring that we can get feedback from other manufacturers as well into the design of this universal TCP. And finally, we've been conducting user feedback sessions directly with healthcare providers. Ultimately, they are our end users, and we want to ensure that we develop a solution that meets their requirements and is simple to use and is a good user experience for that end user. Next slide, please. So we've been in partnership with Accenture since about the middle of last year in developing this universal TCP. So the first goal here is really developing this single front door where HCPs can access cell and gene therapies across different manufacturers and also across different modalities. The goal here is also to develop a really modular service-based solution that supports interoperability and the ability to plug and play. And I know Fred will talk more about the architecture and the service-based design in a bit. We also want to develop a solution that supports manufacturer-specific configurations where needed, and of course, data security and privacy are at the top of mind. Next slide, please. So our overall approach for developing the Atheros capability is really in 3 major steps. So the first is developing the MVP, which is our current focus. We would then prepare for scale and expand the orchestration capabilities that enable us to grow into additional geographies and also increase the number of treatment centers and orders that we're able to support. And finally, the goal is to realize the full and mature solution that can support a diverse portfolio of cell and gene therapies and enables us to quickly configure and be able to support new therapies that come into the portfolio. And next slide, please. So we're currently focused on developing the MVP, and the primary focus here is to mitigate any risks related to chain of custody, chain of identity. We're also implementing core capabilities around ordering, the ability to view value chain statuses for healthcare providers, and just that overall healthcare provider engagement on the TCP side. On the TMP side, again, we're establishing the core chain of custody, chain of identity capabilities, order management, and label printing capabilities. And we're also starting to build out those key integrations between the TCP and TMP. So this slide gives a detailed view of the key capabilities that we've been focused on developing since mid-2021. And so, yeah, feel free to take a look if you're interested. And I won't go through all the details here, but yeah, just to highlight that we are, marching towards that MVP release later this year. And yeah, really focusing on just the key capabilities that mitigate risks around chain of custody, chain of identity. All right, that's it from me. And so I'll turn it now over to Fred to go into more detail about the architecture.
So a pretty tall order there you can see from our chief customer, as it were, in Fred and my context. So I think, Fred, this is your interpretation of how we can support the key requirements in the design that Ankai's described.
Yeah, exactly. That's really about supporting this very ambitious business strategy and consortium approach. And if you go to the next slide, what we need to do in order to support it is to develop an efficient and reactive platform. And here are some aspects of it. Yeah. First of all, the patient safety is obviously placed at the center of our architecture vision, and supported by a robust chain of identity, chain of custody, and without forgetting the ability to enable end-to-end monitoring and be able to react very rapidly when any kind of issue is faced along the way. So that's one aspect of it. We have also user, customer, and patient experience. I mean, Ankai was mentioning that. I mean, we want to offer this experience that is key to our vision. And the solution that we are developing requires the treatment of patient data. I mentioned here PHI and PII. We have to ensure that compliance requirements are covered by design. This includes the limitation of the propagation of PHI and PII data across the different systems and services, and also the auditability of the whole thing. The next aspects on that are all supporting the idea of providing solutions that can enable this the CGT fast clock speed, and also the flexibility that is really a requirement on this ever evolving or rapidly evolving space that we are in. And finally, the architecture of that we need to propose should be able to handle multiple modalities, both in clinical and commercial stage, and be able to scale there. Want to go to the next slide, please. So, being architect, we obviously needed to develop principles, and here is a very high level of the view of the guiding principle that we developed. I don't want to go into the detail of all of those principles now, but just willing to mention the categories that we use. I mean, design and build, end-to-end, and it's important in the context of the full value chain that we are covering. The responsiveness that is required, and the data being the greatest assets. Okay. Next slide, please. So, the nice diagram now. Ankai mentioned this consortium approach that we are taking, and with industry partners, but also partners like SAP, Accenture, etc. Such an approach can only be enabled if the design has this high degree of modularity, and that's why we adopted a service-based design in order to avoid the classic monolith and proprietary approach to such solutions. The service-based design has also the benefit to easily adapt to various therapies and modalities. And I will illustrate this idea in the next slide. But it also supports the flexibility that is required to respond to those rapid requirement changes, while minimizing and limiting the impact to specific parts of the entire solution. In fact. What we've done is defining several categories of services. Here with the main characteristic for all those services to be interchangeable. This is really a key part of it. We would like to be able to swap and plug and place those services and in a really rapid and cheap manner. So the first type of services that we have are those Atheros core services. I mean the core services themselves. They constitute kind of the backbone, this blue backbone of or blue thread of the entire solution, supporting the end-to-end business process. They are mostly centered on integration and make the full solution standing. In fact, they do connect all the other type of services, being, for example, the UI service. Those ones they are at the top. They should also be interchangeable, allowing the creation of and the evolution of the user interface in a search for an ever-increasing and better user experience. The next category that I would like to mention is those enabling services. Those are the services supporting specific business capabilities that will have to put together in order to support the end-to-end process. In our case, for example, they may be provided by SAP, Accenture, internally by Roche, or by any other partner, in fact. And that's back to this interchangeability. We should be in a position to modify the picture without having to, the providers without changing the overall picture. Finally, we have the data and infrastructure services. Those are more classic supporting services, but here as well, we need to be able to support interchangeability. And regarding this interchangeability, we had it into practice recently, and tested this model. This model was working properly when we had to switch from one partner to another without having to engage high redesign or high development effort, and nor high cost in this exercise. Maybe let's take just an example. And if you take the patient onboarding, that is this enabling service at the top. This independent service we need to call through the onboarding Atheros core services, the PHI data store service, for example, in order to store the patient information that will be recorded and captured during this by the patient onboarding service, but also reach out to the CY service to record the steps that have been taken. And through those different mechanisms, we can run through all the events that you have along the process. Last point on this, in order to to easily and transparently interact and thus being consortium ready, those services require common definitions. I mean, this was something that that we faced in the past months, making sure that when we are talking about a specific service, all the parties have the same definition of what it is. And this allows the creation of open solution in this case. And if you go to next slide, too, please. I wanted to illustrate here how this approach can adapt to the different patterns or the different modalities. You can see here, for example, the differences between a gene therapy scenario and or an individualized therapy scenario. And for gene therapy, for example, we may not need a PHI, PII data store or the scheduling service or things like that, but we can, yeah, just adjust to the required services. Next slide, please. I finally wanted to share two concrete examples of definition of services that we were able to agree between Roche, SAP, and Accenture. We managed to agree on a common template definition, template for the definition of those services as well. That's what you have here. Here is the service definition for the PHI, PII data store service, and on the next slide you're going to see the COC, COI service as well. To be honest, it's been a big effort. There is a real effort that is demanded behind that, but without this, we cannot reach this full modularity objective and that we need for the consortium approach. In a sense, this is a way to standardize the services to leverage all advantages of real standards, in fact. Yeah. I mean, you have examples in our industry of such painful and costly integration situation with the lack of standards, in the case of instrumentation marketplace, for example. And we really would like to avoid such a headache in the design approach we are taking. This is it for me.
Did you want?
I mean, there is the COI, COC. I mean, if you go to the next one, that's just yeah, of this other one.
So you're showing these as examples, are you Fred? Yeah.
Correct. Not going into detail of it, just examples that we are able to reach as common definitions.
Brilliant. Thank you both, Ankai and Fred. That's great and clearly an excellent choice on my part, because I could never have done it the same justice. So thank you so much for that. But I think as illustrated there, if you like, the problem statement that we faced at the beginning of this journey of not really being able to find the right capabilities in the marketplace to support, if you like, this ambition for scale and industrialization in the future, and the desire for us not to carry the full, if you like, risk and cost of a customized solution, which some of the pioneers in cell and gene therapy have had to adopt, not through lack of, not through choice necessarily, but because there was nothing else in the marketplace. We're not pioneers in the space but we wanted to try and establish an industrialized capability, and what Ankai has set out in terms of the business challenge and the strategy for the business in adopting this approach, and Fred's response to that in creating a truly agile product that enables both Roche to respond with flexibility to the needs of our changing business, but also enable the industry to adopt the platform both as a consumer of the platform, a user of the platform, but also a service provider into the environment. So if you like, software providers, system integrators, etc., would be able to play in that mode. I regularly have sleepless nights over this. The chances of us being 100% successful is, has got some risks associated with it. So we're trying very hard, and forums like this are very important to us to ensure that we can share our perspective and our approach, and to kind of get your feedback on it. Just one thing to add here, and David said no sell. So my objective here isn't to sell, because we don't have any IP in these platforms. We're adopting them like So that's really important thing to say. So if you do choose to come and join us in the consortium or to adopt some of these products, we don't make any money out of it, but we do share the risk and share the opportunity to build better industry capabilities if you were to do so.